a very warm welcome to everyone to this first Blue Table webinar in 2025. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you all. Maybe you are joining us for the very first time today, so it will be also my honor and privilege to present to you what we are intending with these webinar series this year and overall as part of the program of the Globethics Academy. My name is Amele Ekwe, and I am the academic dean of the organization. And I have designed this webinar series, and it all began in 2021. And I'd like to tell you more about how it all began. But before doing so, let me also welcome our guest speaker for today, Professor Luci Attala, joining us from the United Kingdom. Welcome, Luci. It's a real privilege and pleasure having you, and I know it will be an exciting webinar on the topic that we have prepared for today. So what to expect in this webinar? First of all, as mentioned, I'd like to talk a little bit about the name, why Blue Table webinars, introduce you a little bit in the theme and the overall purpose of the series, and then start talking a little bit more with Professor Attala about what fascinates her about the investigation in human lives and human relationships and what is at stake. Now, I will come in a moment to the presentation of our guest speaker, but I would at this point already invite you to prepare your questions, because your engagement in this webinar matters to us. So you can prepare your questions, which we will read and use then after Professor Attala's presentation to engage with her. You see on the bottom of your screen the little section for questions and answers, and it would facilitate the process if you can use this function instead of the comment section. Then I'd like to talk a little bit more on how you can get involved in Globethics as a movement and a network, because we have a whole array of activities, of initiatives, and of events also beyond this Blue Table webinar series. And I'd like at the end to invite you to our next webinars. So what are Blue Table webinars? We thought it is meaningful to have an open space for conversation on cutting edge issues of ethical relevance. Blue is in reference to our Globethics visual identity color, and table is symbolizing the gathering of people of diverse backgrounds to share and to engage with one another. The Blue Table webinars started in 2021 and have evolved since then as a signature program of Globethics Academy over the years. And it constitutes, in a way, the continuation of a topic that we have taken on in 2022, when we selected 6 guiding verbs: remembering, thinking, working, eating, inventing, and loving, around the question what it means to be human. And this year's topic of a new climate for humanity living together in the digital era kind of connects to this very conversation. It invites to reflect upon the new situation of humans in a world marked by uncertainty and a plethora of rapid changes, and perhaps we have to say also threats. So this year's series will ask questions on how we can reimagine what it means to be human, but also reimagining our relationships beyond humankind amidst an unprecedented historical phase, and how perhaps there are specific ethical commitments that we need to take into account, or we have to recommit to ethics afresh. In short, we are asking, how can living together in this era be imagined or reimagined? You will see that beyond this webinar today, under the subtitle of the wow factor of investigating human lives, we have further webinars that will take you across very different topics, but all very pertinent. And what kind of binds them together is the interest in looking at the overarching topic from very different angles. So we will take on the theme of the restitution of cultural heritage and what that means for human relationships and identity. We will have a fascinating webinar on green artificial intelligence, indigenous knowledge, and climate adaptability. But we will also look into a very practical topic of, can we live without technology? What about digital detox? Or we would also look into topics that are a little bit deeper. What about when life is or becomes hard? How do we cope with vulnerabilities, with limitations, with injustices? And last not least, we will ask, what is meaningful life? We will unfold this with many different speakers from different backgrounds and regions, cultures and languages and specialities. And we would like to make it very engaging and practical, inviting you all to participate in this conversation. And I will post in the chat in the moments an additional opportunity for you to gain digital badges. And once you register to our Blue Table webinars this year, you will have the opportunity to earn one digital badge per session. So if you go to our online learning platform, you will receive the link once you will have registered to the Blue Table webinars. You can, after fulfillment of the reading and the questions related to that reading, earn this digital badge. So in total, you will have the possibility to earn 6 digital badges this year. And I will cordially invite you to consider that. And as mentioned, I will repeat that in the chat in a moment. Now, I would like to now introduce you more closely to Luci Attala, who is an associate professor in anthropology, serving in the United Kingdom. She has many different roles in addition to her professorship. She is, among others, the Deputy Executive Director of UNESCO-MOST Bridges, the global coalition, as well as the UK branch. And she is also a global policy expert. And since most recently, she is also a Globethics Pool of Experts member. Now, Luci Attala is a specialist in anthropology, not only by way of her research and her teaching, but she is also engaged in many global initiatives and is collaborating with people in different contexts. And so I would like to pose to you, Luci, the question of what fascinates you regarding human lives and human relationships at this moment in time? Perhaps a quick opening response before we come to your presentation. And once again, a very warm welcome to you.
Thanks, Emily. Well, weirdly enough, I think people in all their diversity is what drew me to anthropology. But oddly, I ended up mainly looking at water and human relationships with water through my research, which then led me to thinking about how people understand their place in the world. So if you look at different cultural ideas that explain the phenomenon of water, you'll find a diversity of different meanings and understandings associated with what water is and how you should behave with water and so on. And that led me to think about how I understood water as more as something that as a resource that I used and was not very reverent about. And that was in sharp contradiction to some of the other people that I was, particularly in the global south, that I was engaging with, and how they understood what water was and what water was for, you know, what it was, what you're supposed to do with it and what you shouldn't do with it and so on. So that that really made me start to think about what people in the global north are doing to water, how they act upon water and are reshaping it and changing it, and how that is having consequences back again in terms of the weather and you know, flooding and drought and so on. And so from that, I created what I called an analytic with my colleague, Professor Steele, called the new materialities approach, which was about trying to persuade people to remember that water is not separate from them, and that water, wind, the soil, everything that comprises the physical world is part of us, almost to the point that I'd be saying we're like family, you know, and you need to treat your family well. And we're not. So is that good enough? Have I answered your question? I think I may have.
Absolutely. I think that's already a very fascinating opening to our conversation and the contribution you can make, especially as you said, that you do see human lives and human existence not as separate from the other elements of life, and that there is indeed an intrinsic relationship between natural elements, and that from understanding the position and existence of humankind in this way, I think it poses also the question of who are we and which kind of responsibility and call we have in this world. So that's deeply meaningful and interesting, I think.
Thank you. And I think also it's becoming a more popular or more easily understandable idea. So in the years that I've been talking in these ways, I'm noticing now it's becoming easier for people to understand what I'm saying because there's much more dialogue, there's much more narrative about the world isn't just a resource, nature-based solutions, rewilding. All of these things are trying to care for the world in a different way rather than simply use it. And part of that, actually, which is interesting for an anthropologist, is to sort of dethrone the human, because the human's sitting up there at the top on the throne, and creating a sort of interesting dynamic in terms of how people understand their relationship to life itself. And so I spent quite a lot of time with my students, great days of, playing around with, how can you get to know the world better? How can you come off your throne and get down in the mud, as it were, and, get to know the world better? And in association with quite a lot of different indigenous philosophies and ideologies and ontologies, there are lots of great examples of using different ideas to understand what the world is and really what we're supposed to be doing as people in relationship to the rest of our family, the physical world. Oh, here, all my plants around me. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. As you're talking, I think it brings back also memories of working with students in the garden and doing
Yeah.
work with our hands in combination with the reflective work, which of course is also important. But I do see it also as a circular enterprise. We need to do something practically so that we can gain new attitudes, new ways of relating to nature, and understand what sometimes we need also to avoid doing in the world, so that we can preserve it for future generations, and shift also in our minds and in our ways of behaving.
Yes, I couldn't
So
agree with you more, because the more fieldwork that I do and the more people that I talk to, that I realize that there are different kinds of knowledge forms. So people understand the world often through their body, particularly people who aren't working in a university and so on. That practical physical engagement with the landscape or with the seascape, or even with the weather, comes from experience which is sort of logged almost into one's flesh. And so that way of knowing, for example, a river. So at the moment, I've been spending about the last year with coracle fishers in Wales. They understand the river in a different way, than, so for example, the council offices who need to clean up rivers. So they have a kind of knowledge that the people who work in an office, even though they're experts in rivers, don't have. And one thing that I'm very keen to do, and the whole team that I'm working with are very keen to do, is try and get those different knowledges into dialogue to see how they can serve each other. So not to privilege one or the other, say one's better than the other, but to say that all of these different ideas need to come together in service of trying to get it right now, trying to repair what we've really damaged, actually, quite significantly. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I agree with you, and I think this is what we try to do also with this series. As you noted, dear participants, I'm addressing myself to you as well, with the title of this series, A New Climate for Humanity. So as we are addressing also environmental issues, we come to a new understanding also of what it means to be human. So yes, let's embark on what you have so kindly prepared for us today, Luci. I'm turning to your slides and will now share them so that you can begin with your talk, to which we are very much looking forward to.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amelie. Really nice to talk to you. Okay, so thank you to everybody who's come to listen to this. I really appreciate it. And thank you also to Globethics for this opportunity. Again, very much appreciate the invite. In a way, this is more of an opinion piece, I'm afraid, than anything else. A bit of a sort of anthro romp, if you like, through what I'm sort of subtitling thinking about humanity using numbers. So you can understand that phrase in a couple of ways. Thinking about humanity using numbers. All right. So the world has always presented a mix of challenges and opportunities, but for me, today feels insecure in unusual ways. Climate change shows how global systems are fragile, social and economic inequalities are exacerbating, political polarization, conflicts and tensions are widespread, and the digital age is revolutionizing social life with technologies that both innovate but also unsettle, raising unique concerns about privacy, misinformation, and mental health. The word digital, as you can see on the slide, which is used to describe this age, or at least the last 50 years, derives from the Latin digitus, meaning finger, or toe, but I'm not going to show you my toes, which are our humans' earliest counting tools. But those physical body parts have been replaced by abstractions represented by a system of numbers. In the digital age, digital refers to the conversion of information into numbers, specifically ones and zeros, which symbolize something and nothing, respectively. It's this binary system that can transform really complex information into a language that machines understand. Next slide, please. The ability to think in abstract terms has created our digital world. It is without question humanity's superpower. To be able to convert fingers into a symbolic idea of quantity and value that everyone can understand is so ordinary to us that we forget it's a phenomenal achievement. In essence, it means that we use our imagination to create what otherwise wouldn't be there, because numbers don't exist. They have no tangible existence. Next slide, please. You won't find a number 5. You can't dig one up because there's no such thing. They only live in our minds. Yet they utterly control our lives. No wonder we're worried about AI. Look what we've done with numbers. For something that doesn't exist, look at how powerful numbers are. They conjure up a way of thinking about each other that quantifies and calculates existence, that determines our own value. And yet, some argue, like love and God, there's little to use as a measure and certainly nothing to reach out and hold on to, no mass, just an electric charge whizzing across neurons. It's all in our minds. Now, people say that anthropologists are interested in culture. That's a little bit inaccurate. We actually look for meanings, specifically how people make sense of existence by attributing meanings to pretty much everything, and then using those meanings to establish a moral and value framework and the rules that are used to create the order that we live by. It's how people give structure to their experience. Next slide, please. Geertz, a very well-respected American anthropologist who championed what's called interpretive anthropology, famously said, people are symbolizing, conceptualizing, meaning-making animals. And following it, Hale, as you can see on the slide, a novelist who read a lot of anthropology, wrote, "We, and I mean humans, are meaning makers. We do not discover the meanings of mysterious things, we invent them. We make meanings because meaninglessness terrifies us above all things. We trick ourselves into seeing meanings in things when in fact, all we're doing is grafting our meanings onto the universe to comfort ourselves. We gild the chaos of the universe with our symbols. To admit that something is meaningless is just like falling backwards into darkness." So meanings, like numbers, are fantastical or imaginary, tied to reality only because we can think of them. Meanings emerge from the answers to the questions we formulate. Once those questions are asked, they're then answered and meanings are created, which are then used to make claims about what is true or good or bad. We use those meanings to shape our behavior and other people's behavior. Phrases like, "you must do this" or "you can't do that," they're designed, literally designed, to make people act in accordance with the socially accepted meanings a group has crafted, perhaps over centuries. So these assertions, as a result of their longevity, are then presented as realities. And through group adherence, they kind of solidify, almost gelling into facts, which then form this intricate, complicated, but invisible pattern that overlays existence, and the traces of which can sometimes be glimpsed at through people's actions. That is culture. So not, opera or traditional dress or song or something. It's the web of meanings. It's the meanings that hold experience together, giving it a coherence and a logic of its own. So you see, we already live in virtual worlds, manufactured by our thoughts and our capacity for meaning making. Now, every species has unique capabilities: speed, flight, strength, built-in weapons like poison and sharp teeth and tusks, and so on, and the ability to attack an immune system as viruses do. Physically, humans can't compare. Next slide, please. I think I might have missed a slide. Yeah, again, the next slide. Humans can't compare, so let's consider the octopus. They can solve complex problems, including navigate maps. They don't need opposable thumbs to open jars. They can escape with squeezing through tiny spaces. They can change color and texture. They can also regrow lost arms. I mean, in comparison, Homo sapiens sapiens, that's us, seems like a bit of a vulnerable, hopeless, incapable, dependent mess, having to spend a lot of energy on helpless infants that we keep producing. How on earth have we ever got anything done, you might ask? I can't remember what the next slide is, but this slide's probably very off-putting for people. Yeah, leave it there for now. Okay. Sort of as physically uneventful as it sounds, pondering or daydreaming or imagining or making up meanings is actually the thing that is responsible for having reshaped the world that we live in today. It's just our capacity for abstract thought and imagination that has driven innovation, art, science, philosophy, and allowed us to visualize new possibilities and push well beyond the limit of what exists without us being around. Yet despite this extraordinary ability, most people are dreadful at seeing beyond what's already been imagined into reality for them. I blame education, but that's another story. Most of us tend to build on what we already know or think is possible, ignoring the fact that the current reality is just one option among countless others. This is the stranglehold of culture. It becomes rigid. It normalizes a particular way of thinking, convincing us that our perspective is the only valid way. even though it's literally just one of many on the planet concurrently. Anyway, articulating an alternative understanding of how to use this ability comes from are the Kogi people in Colombia. There you can see them on the slide, who train selected members of their community in how to think well. You may think that all cultures educate their citizens, but this is different. Their culture is founded on the notion that controlled thinking provides access to important ancestral wisdom, recognizing that most people are unable to control their thoughts adequately. They go to great pains to ensure that their spiritual leaders can, on the understanding that poorly formed thoughts generate damage. So for the Kogi, the spirit world maps onto the physical features of any territory. Certain trees are ancestors. A significant rock is one of the original people, for example. A lagoon might be somebody's mother or father. Indeed, every object or entity is aware, and accordingly, their thoughts, the entity's thoughts, run through the landscape, both connecting to other entities and leading back to the first thoughts ever conceived when the world thought itself into being. Understanding how to think well allows your thoughts to travel along these pathways and understand the original thoughts. Being able to do this stops you from doing damage to the thinking mind of the world, who they call the Great Mother. Today, as the fabric of territories are cut, drilled, mined, paved over, thought pathways are being severed, impacting the way the world can think and prompting her to forget who she really is. By rethinking and reconnecting the thoughts of the landscape, one is caring and healing the landscape, enabling a regenerative process that reminds the world of its true identity, who it once was. So for the Kogi, it's the inability to think well that is causing the environmental destruction. And I think we could probably all agree with that. Too many people are thinking the wrong thoughts and must decide to think again. Stop seeing the world through economic glasses. Break the thought patterns of individualism and self-interest that the forces of globalization have habituated. Understand that what you think impacts the world. Change your mind. Next slide, please. In 2021, sorry, next slide, please. Yes, well done. In 2021, also concerned about the world as the Kogi are, UNESCO launched Bridges, which is the first transdisciplinary humanities-informed sustainability science program within the United Nations. Bridges uses a transdisciplinary approach that encourages academics to stop pontificating, get out of their ivory towers and talking shops onto the ground with people to break the spell of abstracting and generalizing about what people want and to see what changes people are actually making. This approach goes beyond basic public involvement towards recognizing the power of communities. Unlike superficial engagements such as surveys or focus groups, Bridges emphasizes long-term, meaningful, co-transformative partnerships and ensures non-expert experts, like the Kogi, are co-creative collaborators from the outset of any project. By recognizing values beyond efficiency, Bridges intends to assist in co-producing the kind of change that communities actually want, rather than arrive at conclusions about what communities should want. So indigenous and global organizations everywhere, indigenous people, sorry, and global organizations everywhere agree business as normal is no longer an option. Enough with another top-down assessment report review committee. We, the people, need to talk and find out what we want. The digital world of social media offers us an amazing unifying communication tool. Although, like everything, it has the flip side. And in this case, a nightmarish madness which has turned many, including politicians, into wide-eyed zealots. Anyway, in amidst this current chaos that we find ourselves in, there are, of course, actions that prove that less harmful thoughts are still finding their way through. Next slide, please. For example, recently I saw a post, this post, from the Good Law Project, who've decided to block Musk. Blocking, incidentally, is a new concept, a way of thinking that wasn't possible BSM, meaning before social media. Musk, the reigning global king of accumulating numbers, understands the dark power of accumulation. He pointedly collects numbers, not people. He separates people, knowing that unifying people increases their collective power way beyond his numbers. How will the Good Law Project block him? They say by uniting people to show we don't want what he's pushing. The same is happening to the other poster boy billionaires, Bezos, Zuckerberg, and so on. Enough is enough. It's time to ask, what interest is there in accumulating, particularly using these extractive values? Just so that you know, I think it's a good idea always to look at etymology of words. So just as you know, it was moneylenders way back in the day that invented the notion of financial interest when they asked borrowers, what interest is there for me in offering you this loan? In this context, the word interest shifted in meaning from sort of curiosity to a return on a loan. It's in our lexicon and we don't even think about it. This marked the beginning of the idea that money could make money. So, you know, for accuracy's sake, let's say numbers can make numbers, because that's what it really is. And when money became this tool to generate surplus and profit from nothing, that's where it came from. So this shift reframed the original meaning of numbers as representing quantities of items, of things, of stuff that was being sold, to a way to measure, and this is what we live with today, financial growth, economic return, and even the health of society. Very clever. This is the power of our thinking, but also very questionable. So ask yourself, what interest is there for you in understanding humanity by numbers? As the anthropologist, the late anthropologist, most missed, David Graeber, said in his talk titled "From Managerial Feudalism to the Revolt of the Caring Classes," it's time to remember that caring is the next revolution we need to create. Next slide, please. Patti Smith's song, "People Have the Power," is an anthem of hope and empowerment that captures the spirit of collective strength and the idea that ordinary people can make a difference. It's a powerful reminder that despite the challenges we face, the power lies within all of us to create a better future. The idea that people have the power is a really well articulated trope that many people might think is naive. But remember, that too is just a thought, and thoughts change things. The power of the powerless is the collective. Shared vision held too tightly. Patti's song, if you haven't heard it, outlines a dream that she commits to you by way of a reminder that you too have the power to dream, to unite, to vote, to rule, to return the Earth's revolution. Her message resonates deeply with the essence of interpretive anthropology, which shows how the meanings we arrive at and we use to create value systems and frameworks and structure people's lives. One of the most memorable lines in the song for me states, "People have the power to wrestle the earth from fools." At no other time in my life has that line been more meaningful than now. We must wrestle the earth from the fools who believe in the fantasy of numbers over people and multi-species justice. And in doing so, we can find new meanings and imagine alternative futures. Thank you. So I told you it was an opinion piece and a rather anthro romp. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Lucy. We listened to you with great interest, and you have indeed created a bridge of thinking through the meaning of human existence, and have started to introduce us into this idea what kind of power lies in thinking and in thought, and what kind of shifts are there, starting with the idea of coming from numbers to meaning making that lies in the hand of people who embrace thinking as the power to think afresh and anew, and thereby, as you say, introduce perhaps a new era in which caring becomes the new guiding word, and which finds also inspiration from the way people already live and have, by the way, lived for centuries in proximity with the earth and with caring, and by caring for the earth. So I think this return to the power of thoughts in a new way is something that really invites for further engagement. I would like to see if we have questions from our participants that we can take up at this point. Let me see if I see one question has come to us from James Omwamba, who asks, very intellectual and fascinating, the wow factor of investigating human lives. What is for you the wow factor in investigating what human lives and relationships are about?
Thanks, James. I'm being slightly blinded by the sun, so excuse me, I'm going to have to answer like this. I think for me, I've been around quite a few years now. I think my fascination with people has always been the wow factor, because I think a lot of us live under the impression that being human is the same, is similar, depending on where you are. And it's certainly the truth. It's certainly true biologically. We have, biologically, we've got similarities, but the creativity, the extraordinary amount of difference in interpretations of what life is for and how we should live has always been something that I've said wow about. So the wow factor isn't saying that any idea is better, but how extraordinary that a species, we have so much difference. We've come to so many different conclusions about what it means to be human, how we should be, what is correct behavior, what are the ethical parameters of existence, what we can do or not do to each other. So, for example, I remember as a child thinking, isn't it weird that we think we can lock certain people in a room for years because they've done something wrong. It's weird. It's like, wow, really? That's what happens? We've settled on that as the idea. This is the way we're going. And I can pull out loads of those ideas about it's almost like going through the looking glass. You sort of anthropology really does mess with your head because it forces you to recognize that being human isn't one thing. Lots of different ways to be human. You know, cats kind of just are cats wherever you are, whatever geography, they just do cat. We don't. Humans are very, very different. That's wow. James, have
Yes,
I answered your question?
thank you very much, Lucy. Indeed, that's a wow factor to understand plurality
Mm.
in human lives as a potential and not as a hindrance or a harm, but as an opportunity to think afresh. So thank you for the question and the response. And we turn to Kletos Zuzarte, who is asking amazing shifts from numbers to meaning-filled words. How can a dispossessed community retrieve their identity, especially when dealing with despotic leaders?
Oh, Cletus, what a question. How could you be asking me that? That's like 10 books worth of answer. Are you thinking specifically about a dispossessed community? Do you want to speak, Cletus? Do you want to actually be heard?
I'm not sure we can enable
Oh,
swiftly
okay.
that
Oh,
because
don't
we
worry.
have webinar format. But maybe, Cletus, you can write
Yeah,
in the chat if you are thinking of a specific community, and I'll be happy to
yeah.
check to
I
read it
mean,
for you.
I feel just to try and attend to that, to give it, even though it's an enormous question, um, it's a very important question. I do feel as if there's quite a lot of this kind of activity really in our faces, especially because of our smartphones and so on these days. And, you know, I've been, like many other people, despondent about the destruction of not only people's lives, but also ideas and cultures and languages and so on. Despotic leaders, I mean, I don't, it's without, okay, tribal, indigenous communities are losing their identity. Yeah, yeah, okay. So, I mean, that's actually something that I do work on. And at the moment, I am working with the Kogi in Colombia, trying to uh, find a way for their knowledge to be understood by environmental scientists. So the Kogi in Colombia have a very particular understanding that I only very briefly outlined in what I was saying in the talk. It amounts to specific actions that anecdotally show that they are very good at restoring territory quickly. And of course, that's of interest to the rest of the world, or, you know, I think everybody would agree that's of interest to the rest of the world. But the trouble with that is that their knowledge draws on spiritual ideas. And of course, the scientific community doesn't automatically draw on spiritual ideas. In fact, if anything, they edit spirituality out. So if an indigenous population works very closely with these spiritual ideas, you know, they're integrated fully into daily life. It's very difficult for somebody who's been educated maybe in, you know, a scientific environment to understand how to use those ideas, how to bring those ideas together. So that's what we're trying to do, is trying to, through intensive dialogue and through working together and through seeing the techniques that people do, try not to do damage anymore to these different ways of being so that they can coexist and mutually benefit each other. I actually thought you were referring to something else when you said dealing with despotic leaders, So, I was tentative in my answer, but thank you, Cletus, for explaining what you meant. I hope I've answered. Oh, more information from Cletus. Yeah, there is a big problem with, so Cletus is saying the sort of the dominant culture, I suppose, don't allow minorities to coexist. It's a big problem. Yeah, we need to find a way, all of us need to find a way to not imagine that one way is better than the other, but that all of us are needed. It's like biodiversity, we need all of the diversity. We don't need just a few types of people. And we need that diversity of thinking.
Diversity and the collective wisdom, indeed. Thank you so much. We have to move on because of time, and I would like to take the other questions and round it off with these. We have a question from Stefan Henger. What are consequences or implications for ethics from what you have shared with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of consequences. I think basically an ethic of care, of understanding that the world, that all of life, including the things that we might call inert, so everything in the physical world needs to be cared for. At the moment, we're very focused on economics and accumulating and sort of taking for ourselves as a result of some kind of quite strange ideas about survival that I would contest. To advocate for an ethic of care to run through everything from school to business to how we deal with our waste and so on, is kind of at the root of what I'm saying, that we need to learn how to care, what care means, what it would look like, and live through the lens of caring, not just for our families, but for everything. Yeah. Stefan, I
Thank you
hope
very
that
much.
helped.
I responded in the chat to James' question of practical order regarding the recordings, and I turn immediately to Mahendra's question coming from Indonesia, the Jambi province, asking about plurality. What do you think the case in Palestine and Israel and the US, how the Security Council of the UN is a reflection of democracy, probably when the big five, France, Russia, UK, US, and China, are not representing the citizens of the world?
Yeah, this is a great question, Mahendra, and I think it has really shocked the world that organizations like the ICC and the UN are not playing by the rules in the case of this conflict in Palestine, over Palestine, and that I mentioned rules in my talk. I think people take comfort that society has rules and that we live by them. But when countries don't, there's supposed to be a move to make sure that they fall back in line, because that's our security, that's our safety and our certainty, and we need that. People really need that. So one of the biggest insecurities about this is the feeling that if somebody, and that's what I thought the earlier question about despotic leaders was referring to, can just negate all of the rules that the rest of us live by and get away with it, is stunning, and very difficult to deal with. So personally, in terms of the case of Palestine and Israel and the support from the United States, I have been fundamentally shocked and troubled by it. And I suspect other people have. But I don't want to sort of reveal my own personal politics about this because I think that's a bit divisive and difficult. Suffice to say that we need to find a way as people to make sure that the rules that we've created are the rules that we want and that we then abide by. And I can't possibly say how that will be. There's too much for one person, I think.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Yes, indeed. You mentioned how plurality is indeed a source for a reimagination of what humanity can be. And I think to this question, I would respond that deliberation, especially in democratic societies, is such an important way of renewing the normative consensus. In other words, we need this constant conversation on what are our fundamental agreements on how we want to live together. And this is what I mean by normative consensus building. It's not a one time for all acquisition, but needs to be constantly renewed through deliberation. And I think that may be another element to respond to this question. I would
Lovely, thank you.
like to verify quickly if we have other questions. This seems not to be the case, which offers me the opportunity to round off by sharing the information on how you can further participate in what we are doing at Globethics. And certainly you need to subscribe to our newsletter. This is for free, and this allows you to get regular updates on our activities and the opportunities for further engagement. You have also the link there for our Globethics events. Please save the date for our Globethics Forum later this year. Certainly a very important event. We will also have our Youth Leadership Award for the second time since last year. Please consult our website regularly. You will find thereon information on our Globethics Academy courses. And of course, if you are an author and you'd like to share your thoughts with the world, please consider to publish with us. Our publications manager will be happy to receive your suggestions. We also have a journal, the Journal of Ethics in Higher Education, and maybe you consider submitting an article. Last not least, please join us for our next Blue Table webinar on 16th of April, Restituting Cultural Heritage and Living Together Anew, another fascinating topic which you wouldn't like to miss. And please send me a message. I posted our email address, academy@globethics.net. And I'll be happy to share more information with you. You have also our Globethics Blue Table webinars dedicated website where you find regularly the updates on our program. With that having said, I would like to thank you all for your participation today. And most importantly, to thank our guest speaker today, Luci Attala. You have made such a rich contribution, both in terms of concepts, but also in establishing meaningful bridges between the practical side of human lives and what, for example, human communities in different contexts, indigenous communities, for example, can contribute to collective thinking and to making our world a better place by inviting us to rethink how we shape our thought systems and what huge potential we have if we allow ourselves to think in a different way. Thank you so much for your contribution, and thank you all for joining us today. Until next time, our Blue Table webinar series continues, and we had a wonderful opening today. Goodbye, and thank you.
Bye.